Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss a question that often perplexes the general audience. That is, does a decline in inflation mean following falling prices? Or what we say in Hindi, that if महंगाई दर कम हो रही है, does that also mean कि prices of commodities भी कम हो रहे हैं? Now, before answering this question, let us first discuss what do we actually mean by inflation. So, inflation basically refers to a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services within an economy over a period of time. So, two things you have to note here, that by when we talk about inflation, we are talking about an increase in the general price level of goods and services, and it is over a period of time. So when I say general price level of goods and services, so we basically, or the governments basically track the average price changes of a basket of goods and services commonly purchased by households. Now this basket differs from country to country and is also periodically updated. The second thing, the period of time is very important. So we might be talking about annual inflation rate. So annual inflation rate would imply what is the change in price level in June 2023 over June 2022. So that is the annual price rise or annual price decline. So it's annual price change. That is June 2022 से June 2023 में क्या change हुआ. Okay, now inflation could also be measured on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis. So, what is the change in price level in June 2023 compared to May 2023? So, that would be a monthly inflation rate. Okay. Now, then we say about price level. So, in the case of statistical calculations, we basically track the percentage change in a price index, which is consumer price index in most countries. However, in India, we also have another price index which is called as the wholesale price index, which is WPI. Okay, now inflation, as some of you might be aware, is caused by various factors, including increased demand for goods and services, rise in production costs, changes in government policies. Changes in government policies would mean the policies that make production costlier, or fluctuations in the money supply. That is, if money supply increases, now if money supply increases, that means there is more money in the hands of the people. So it would be the case of a very large amount of money chasing too few goods, and hence this would be inflationary. Now, why will this be inflationary? Because you need to understand that there is a lag between a monetary policy intervention and a ramp up of supply chains. So let's say there's suddenly a huge demand for cars in the economy because loans have become cheaper, interest rates have come down. So, but then immediately, obviously, car manufacturers cannot increase the supply of cars. So they will adjust to the changes in demand, but that would be possible only over a period of time. So in the short run, this increase in money supply, which would lead to a lowering of interest rates, which would lead to an increased demand for cars in the short run, would lead to an increase in prices of cars. Now let us answer the question that we are trying to discuss or analyze in this video. Does a decline in inflation mean falling prices? So the answer is no. A decline in inflation does not mean that the prices are also falling. So this is often confusing. So let us try to understand this using a hypothetical example. So let us say the price of a commodity increases from rupees 30 in June 23 to rupees 40 in June 24. So here we are, so this is a hypothetical example. We are talking about a single commodity. Well, when we talk about inflation for an economy, we talk about price level of a basket of goods. But here we are talking about just a single commodity. So then the rate of price rise, or if I talk about the inflation rate for this commodity, would be, so how do we calculate a percentage change? So it is basically final value minus initial value upon initial value into 100. So this is how we calculate the percentage change in any variable for that matter. Uh, so for this commodity, for which we are trying to calculate the percentage change in its price. So that would be 40 minus 30 divided by 30 into 100, which is 33.33%. Okay, so that's the inflation rate or rate of inflation for this commodity. It's the annual inflation rate. Now let's say the commodity sells at rupees 50 June 2025. Okay, then the rise in price of the commodity from June 2024 to June 2025 would again be the same formula, final value minus initial value. Now the final value for that commodity. So basically we are now in June 2025 and we are trying to calculate the inflation rate for this commodity. So it would be 50 minus 40 by 40 into 100. So that would be 25%. Now observe here that from 2023 to 2024, the inflation rate was 33.33%. And from June 24 to 25, the inflation rate, or the annual inflation rate for this commodity was 25%. So in both the cases, the price of the commodity has increased. Earlier it increased from 30 to 40 between June 23 and June 24. Now it has increased from 40 to 50. So even though the rate of inflation or the rate of price rise of this commodity has fallen, why it has fallen? As you can see, it has fallen from 33.33% to 25%. So पहले इतना था 33.33%, now it is 25%. But that does not mean that the prices of the commodity have also fallen. The prices have in fact actually increased. Okay, so what has changed? So earlier the prices were increasing at a rate of 33.33%. Now the prices are increasing at a rate of 25%. So when inflation falls, so that basically means prices rise but at a slower pace. It does not mean that the prices are not going up or the prices are falling. The prices are still going up. So this is what we call as disinflation. So this is what is called as disinflation. Now let us discuss formally what is disinflation. So disinflation refers to a situation where the rate of inflation is decreasing but it is still positive. So that means that inflation is falling but it is still positive. Positive inflation means अभी भी महंगाई है. Okay, whenever inflation, so positive inflation means there is an increase in price level. There is an increase in price level. So as long as the inflation is positive, it would mean that the prices are rising. But falling inflation means, or disinflation means, that prices are rising at a slower pace compared to previous periods. Okay. So, for example, let's say the inflation rate in an economy was 5% in the previous year. In the current year, the rate of inflation decreases to 2%. So, rate of inflation पहले 5% था, अब 2% हो गया. So, again, the same point. This is a situation of disinflation because there is a decline in the rate of inflation. That does not mean that the prices are falling. It only means that the prices are rising but at a slower pace compared to the previous year. Therefore, disinflation means that inflation is still positive, but the rate of increase is lower. Okay. Another related concept is deflation. Okay, so people often tend to get confused between disinflation and deflation. So again, to repeat, disinflation, as we discussed, is falling inflation. That is the rate of inflation is falling, but inflation is still positive. That means prices are rising. However, deflation is the opposite of inflation. Deflation is the opposite of inflation. So that basically means that whenever there is a decrease in the general price level of goods and services in an economy, it is a situation of deflation. Now the prices are not rising, the prices are actually falling. Okay, for example, if the inflation rate was 2% in the previous year, but it decreases to -1% in the current year. So this is -1%. Okay, so deflation will always be negative rate of inflation, negative inflation rate. Now, why will it be negative inflation rate? So just to explain this in terms of the price of a single commodity, let's say the price of a commodity was rupees 50 in June 2023. Now it has decreased to rupees 40 in June 2024. So what will be the rate of price increase or decrease? So that would be again final value minus initial value upon initial value into 100. So in this case, this inflation rate would be negative. So whenever prices are falling, so that's a case of deflation. Okay. So prices falling indicates deflation. So this is a situation of negative inflation where the general price level is decreasing. Now here when we say falling inflation, so inflation has fallen below zero or inflation has become negative. In the case of disinflation, while inflation is coming down, but it is still positive. That is why the prices are still rising. But in the case of deflation, inflation has actually become negative, so the prices have actually fallen. In the case of disinflation, prices were actually rising. Okay, so to summarize, so disinflation refers to falling inflation. Prices are still rising, but at a slower rate. Deflation is basically negative inflation. It is a situation where prices are falling. Now, there is another concept which is often quoted in the context of some countries, that is hyperinflation. Now, what is hyperinflation? So it's basically very high level of inflation. Now, when we say very high level, so generally it is considered to occur when the monthly inflation rate exceeds 50% for an extended period. Now, 50% is a very high level of inflation these days. In For the Indian economy, the inflation hovers around 5%, 6%. So imagine a country having an inflation rate more than 50%, and this is not something which is utopian. This has actually happened in the case of some countries, which we would discuss in subsequent videos. So in severe cases, hyperinflation can lead to daily price increases, making it difficult for people to meet their basic needs and causing economic instability. That's all in this video. Thank you.